5 years ago, my world turned upside down during what should have been the most exciting time of my life, my final year of university. My parents had been married for decades, but their relationship was far from perfect. My father was a textbook example of a psychological aggressor. For years, I watched him undermine my mom, diminish her confidence, and control every aspect of her life. His behavior didn't stop with her. He also tried to control and manipulate me, dismissing my interests, belittling my ambitions, and making me feel like I'd never be good enough. When my mom finally filed for divorce, I was relieved, but I had no idea how bad things would get. As I reached adulthood, I had already started pulling away from my father emotionally, but the divorce forced me to take a side, and it wasn't a difficult decision. I chose to support my mom fully and moved in with her. This enraged my father. He saw my decision as a betrayal, not just of him, but of our entire relationship. The divorce itself was ugly. My mom had purchased our home entirely on her own. It was her dream house, paid for with years of hard work. Yet my father demanded half of its value. Legally, he was entitled to it, but morally, it felt like theft. To make matters worse, the divorce dragged on for over a year, during which my father continued to live in the house with us. His presence was unbearable. He destroyed furniture, punched holes in the walls, and made constant snide remarks about how we were kicking him out of his own home. The tension was so bad that I could hardly breathe in my own home. As the situation escalated, I realized that if we wanted to keep the house, we'd have to pay him his share. The amount he demanded, $50,000, was impossible for my mom to come up with on her own. She was already struggling financially due to the legal fees and the stress of the divorce. So I stepped in. Between studying for my IT engineering degree and preparing for graduation, I took on 3 part-time jobs. I worked mornings, evenings, and weekends, barely sleeping, and somehow managed to keep my grades up. It was grueling, but I was determined to help my mom keep our home. After what felt like an eternity, we finally saved enough money to pay him off. My father took the money and left, but not before causing one final round of destruction. He smashed appliances, ripped pictures off the walls, and left the house in chaos. When he walked out the door, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Finally, he was gone, and my mom and I could begin to rebuild our lives. But my father didn't just leave physically. He also cut me off completely. One day, he stopped answering my calls and texts. I tried reaching out a few times, hoping that with the divorce behind us, we might be able to salvage some kind of relationship. Instead, he made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with me. He told me he had a new family now, his partner and her 2 stepsons. According to him, they were the children he had always wanted. Unlike me, they weren't geeky or pathetic. I'll never forget the sting of those words. It was as if he had erased me from his life entirely. What hurt even more was that he didn't stop at cutting me off. He went to my extended family, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and painted me as the villain. I don't know exactly what he told them, but whatever it was, it worked. Not a single one of them reached out to hear my side of the story. One by one, they all cut me off. I lost an entire side of my family in the span of a few months. Despite everything, I managed to keep moving forward. I graduated at the top of my class, earning the highest score in my faculty. This achievement opened the door to an incredible opportunity, a scholarship for an MBA program in Italy. The scholarship covered tuition and some basic living expenses. But because of the visa restrictions, I wasn't allowed to work while studying. Once again, my mom stepped up. Despite her own financial struggles, she helped me make ends meet so I could focus on my studies. The MBA program was life-challenging. I worked hard, learned as much as I could, and made connections that would later shape my career. After completing the program, I returned to my home country 3 years ago and landed a fantastic job at an international IT company. The position paid well, better than I ever imagined, and I was finally able to give back to my mom. I bought a new apartment for us, replaced her old car, and ensured she could live comfortably without worry. After years of hardship, it felt amazing to see her smile again. Then, out of nowhere, my father reappeared. It started innocuously enough, friend requests on Facebook. At first, I ignored them, thinking he'd get the hint, but he didn't. He kept creating new accounts and sending more requests. Eventually, he managed to get my new phone number and began calling me. I avoided his calls as long as I could, but the messages he left were relentless. He claimed that he and his wife were starving, that his stepsons couldn't find jobs, and that it was my duty to help them. He said he's been drowning in debts, and I should help him pay them. He admitted to spending all of the $50,000 we had given him for the house on his new family, funding his stepson's education, and maintaining his wife's lifestyle. Now, they had nothing, and he expected me to step in. I told him no, politely but firmly. I explained that I couldn't help him. That's when the manipulation started. He insisted that I owed him for raising me, and he had always loved me, and that I was heartless for turning my back on my own father. That he was hurt by me choosing my mother in their divorce. When I continued to refuse, his tone shifted to anger. He began showing up at the reception desk of my apartment building, causing scenes, and trying to guilt me into giving him money. The harassment didn't stop with him. Somehow, his side of the family got involved. They called and messaged me, saying I was selfish and ungrateful for refusing to help my father. Some even threatened legal action, though I knew they had no grounds to stand on. Their words hurt, but I refused to back down. The breaking point came when they targeted my mom. One night, they showed up at her house and smashed every single window. They left a message saying that this was just the beginning if I didn't give my father the money he wanted. I was furious. The thought of my mom, who had already endured so much, being dragged into this nightmare was unbearable. I went straight to the police and filed for a restraining order against my father and his family. Even with the restraining order in place, I'm struggling emotionally. Some of my friends have suggested that I should forgive my father and help him, arguing that he's still my dad and that helping him wouldn't be a huge burden for me financially. They're not wrong. My job pays well, and I could afford to send him money without it impacting my lifestyle. But every time I consider it, I'm overwhelmed by memories of how he treated me. He abandoned me, replaced me, and left me to fend for myself when I needed him most. Now, only when he has nothing left, does he come crawling back, demanding my help. I've spent countless nights crying over this. Part of me feels guilty for refusing to help, especially knowing that he might genuinely be struggling. But another part of me knows I owe him nothing. He made his choices that prioritized his new family over me, and now he's facing the consequences. Why should I bail him out when he never once supported me? So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to financially support my estranged father and his new family? OP's father is trying to manipulate OP into feeling guilty because he burned every bridge he had, and now he's facing the consequences. He had a chance to maintain a relationship with OP, but instead, he chose to insult OP, abandon OP, and spend his money on a new family. OP doesn't owe him anything. OP worked hard to build the life OP has now. OP deserves the peace he has worked so hard for. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Wow, not the a-hole 1,000 times over. Your father's behavior is despicable. Not only did he abandon you and your mom, but he also actively destroyed your relationship with your extended family. And now he expects you to save him? No. He made his choices. He chose his new family over you, and now that they've failed him, he's coming back. You are not his backup plan. Stick to your guns, and don't give in to his or his family's harassment. You've done nothing wrong. Not the a-hole. You've already given him enough. Let's not forget that you and your mom literally worked yourselves to the bone to give him $50,000 just to get him out of your lives. He squandered that money on his new family, and now he's trying to emotionally blackmail you into supporting him. If he's really struggling, he should look to his wife and stepsons for help. They're the ones he prioritized over you, after all. You don't owe him anything. Protect yourself and your mom, and let the restraining order do its job. Absolutely not the a-hole. It's infuriating how people like your father expect unconditional support after years of neglect and mistreatment. He made it clear that you weren't a priority in his life, and now he's reaping what he sowed. The fact that he and his family have escalated to threats and vandalism shows exactly why you need to stay far away from them. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life, especially when they're toxic. You've worked too hard to let him ruin what you've built. Keep him blocked, and don't feel guilty. You're doing the right thing. I, 45 male, never got married or had kids. My little brother, 41 male, and his wife, 39 female, have 2 daughters, the eldest of which is 18 and expecting her first child. As a backstory, in 2008 I was let go from my job at a regional accounting firm. Nobody was taking on staff back then, so I took some time out and studied to become a licensed insolvency practitioner. After which I started my own firm and started making good money dealing with companies going into administration after the credit crunch. This career shift enabled me to buy my first house at 37 and start to save for the future. My brother, like most people, was not as lucky as I was. In 2008, he had a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old and got made redundant. He and his wife lost the house, which was unfortunate. If they'd have been able to hang on for another 18 months, I'd have been able to support them with their mortgage payments. But at that time, I was also out of work and living off savings. After I bought my house 8 years ago, I started saving for my niece's university fees. The government at that time had just announced that they were raising fees to £9,000 a year, so I wanted the girls to be able to go without getting into a huge amount of debt. I felt bad for my little brother and the girls, because I was doing well, and they were struggling at the time. They would never have accepted any money from me, so saving up for their uni fees felt like the next best thing. I gave up on a few things, like I couldn't afford a nice car, but chose something more discreet and saved the difference. My eldest niece, who we'll call Rachel, was meant to be off to uni in October. However, she's now taking up her place because she's pregnant and has decided to defer her studies to take care of the baby. She called me over the bank holiday weekend to ask about the uni fund and whether she could have some of the money to get set up in her own flat and buy baby things. I said that the answer is no. The money is for her education, and she could either have it when she goes to university at some point in the future, or I would pay for a local college course so she could finish her A-levels and learn a skill, like bookkeeping, so she could get a higher paying job. Ultimately, this caused a big family row, where I was labeled as the villain because I wouldn't give Rachel her money when she needed it most. I really don't see it as her money to spend how she chooses. It's only hers on the condition that she uses it for her education. If I give her £25,000 now, that'll last a year to 18 months. Then what happens? If she gets her degree, completes vocational training, and establishes a career, then she'll be on her own 2 feet and can financially survive. I'd appreciate a fresh pair of eyes on this. So, can anyone tell me if I'm being an a-hole for not giving Rachel her money for anything other than university, local college, or training? Not the a-hole in my eyes. That money was set aside for a goal, her education. If that goal is not met, then no point in offering that money. I'm just surprised that your family members are acting like total jerks to you. It's not their money to command like that. Not only that, OP has very clear logic that funding university will last her niece's lifetime, whereas giving the money now would just subsidize her short-term living costs. And seriously, people understandably go all out on their first baby and will burn through the cash quickly for the best new buggy, cloths, etc. Niece won't even remember this in a few years' time if she gets the cash now. Not the a-hole. It's not her money. It is your money, and you are still open to give it to her for the purpose it was intended. Having a child is not excuse to give up education. Quite the opposite. It is a good reason to start having one more than ever. College sweethearts. Married after graduation. After 2 kids, wife announced that she wanted to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. I had a fledgling business, and money was tight, but we made it work. After 10 years and 3 kids, life was solid. I was working 60-plus hours building the business. We got along well. Kids were great, and I was living the dream. At this time, wife announced she wanted a boob job. It was just to blow the balloons back up. I thought they were just fine, exactly as nature intended, and made it clear it was for her, not me. We budgeted for months, and she got it done right before our 11th anniversary. 11th anniversary dinner. Wife advised that she loved me, but was not in love with me. Such a cliche. She wanted a divorce. I was gobsmacked. I thought she was kidding. We like to prank each other. Nope. Serious as a heart attack. 1. I discovered she was having an affair with son's friend's dad. Her best friend was a key enabler. 2. I did everything to save the marriage, but called it dead after 6 months of trying. 3. Tens of thousands in legal bills. I got evicted from our house due to false allegations. Her greatest shame to this day. Started the process of selling the business to pay her 50%. No fault state. No penalty for adultery. 4. I had twice monthly weekend visitation, living in a basement apartment, had to pay interim child and spousal support that left me financially destitute. It was hell, pure hell. She turned into a vicious, vindictive person that I didn't even recognize. Then, right before the divorce was finalized, the nightmare was over. She ended it with the boyfriend, invited me back home, and we started the long, very long, road to reconciliation. Fast forward to now. 25 years of marriage. Life is okay. Kids are doing great. I kept the business, and the business did well. We moved to a different city. Wife has a new circle of friends. I have no reason not to trust her. The issue. Wife wants a mini facelift, liposuction that will cost about $25,000. Money is not the issue. Last plastic surgery gave her self-esteem a steroid boost. However, as it turned out, first person to touch her new boobs in an S-way wasn't me. I'm sure I suffer undiagnosed PTSD. The idea of new plastic surgery is giving me heavy-duty flashbacks. I said no way. Agreed that I control finances, except for monthly spending budget. Her position is that she's paid her penance through years of individual and couples counseling. She admits her failure and betrayal, and has spent 14 years making good her mistake. She says my refusal to pay is punishing her for ancient history. She says it's controlling. The issue has caused the first real heavy argument, complete with raised voices and silent treatment, in a decade. Do I think the new plastic surgery will be a precursor for another affair? Not really, but I would have bet my life that the first one wouldn't have either. Edit. A number of commenters have asked what the basis of the false allegation. Very long story, but I'll share the basics. Early on, she had promised that she ended the affair, and we started emergency counseling sessions. However, as my trust level was at zero, occasionally, when she would leave the house, I would later drive to where she was going to confirm she was actually there, or would leave my business during the day and drive by the boyfriend's house. That, apparently, can be determined to be stalking. And, with the right scum-sucking lawyer, it can be twisted into an argument that I was a threat to her safety. As she was the primary caregiver and the kids were best served by staying in their home, I was, a few months later, ordered to leave by a family court judge. In summary, to get me evicted from my house that I shared with her and the kids, she had to swear out a statement that she believed I was stalking her and was therefore a threat to her safety. Affairs and the fallout from them can be a nasty business. Edit number 2. To better clarify my key argument. During the reconciliation process, there were many triggers that needed to be removed. Wife cut off all contact with her previous best friend, as I couldn't stand the thought of the enabler being anywhere in my life. We moved across the state, so that there would be less chance I would encounter boyfriend at our kids' schools or around town. Certain songs were triggers, certain jewelry was a trigger. We even changed her car, as the boyfriend had driven it often. As time passed, triggers became less common, and I would often go months without thinking of the affair and that awful time. This new proposal for plastic surgery is a trigger, and brought back feelings I hadn't felt in years. In most instances, my wife acknowledged the triggers and we worked to remove them from our lives. Although she concedes that there might be a weak connection in this case, she argues it's apples and oranges. Her image is very important to her, etc., etc. There were some triggers that couldn't be legally dealt with, such as the fact that her affair partner suffered no repercussions. So yes, I have to live with some triggers that we couldn't change, but I don't think I need to live with this and/or contribute to it. And yes, we've had counseling, perhaps too much at times. I think it's obvious here that the plastic surgery isn't the issue. 25 years after a pretty crap time, you still don't trust your wife. This is an issue for a therapist where the both of you need to talk through this together. Edited to add. Yes, the a-hole, purely because it's clear you haven't worked through the issues that stemmed from her affair and everything that came after it. You don't get to keep throwing it in her face when you made the decision to take her back. He has every right to not trust his wife. I wouldn't trust her. Remember, she only went back to him because her affair fell through. Very rare does this kind of situation work out. Not the a-hole. After 25 years, she doesn't need to be a stay-at-home mom anymore. She should get a job and pay for her own surgery, and you need to move to a place where she can't screw you over if she cheats again. I can't believe you got back together with her. I was shocked. I don't even know what to tell you. I would say no, this will never end. Sorry, I don't know that I would trust her. Remember, she only came back to you because her affair fell through. My primary reason at the time was for the kids. Additionally, the person that she was during her affair was not the person that I had known so well over the previous 15 years. It's like she was taken over by the body snatchers. Over the years since, we've undergone hundreds of hours of counseling, both couple and individual. I know for many there is no recovery from a spousal affair. However, for many more, ourselves included, there is, so long as the conditions are right. There are no perfect solutions. However, the path I chose was right for me, both at the time and right now. Last December, my mom signed my sister up for a skincare facial course. The reason is my sister, 19 female, finished high school in June and has not looked for a job since then. She does not want to work and isn't interested in finding one. The idea is that after this course, my mom would like a job for her at a spa. When my mom presented this idea to me, I, 28 female, agreed to help her out with the payment. She is a single mom who has a very high mortgage and also still raises my sister and her boyfriend. So I felt responsible to help her and my sister out. I wanted to relieve some of the pressure from her. However, she never specified that, 1, I would be the only one paying for the course. I could have assumed looking at her financial situation. 2, that the course would be $280 per month until July. When she asked, she first said it was $125, but forgot to add that was only for the first 2 months. It's been 3 months now, and I found myself getting annoyed and brought up at the end of January that I would be paying until the end of March. The reason I brought this up is because, 1, I mostly tend to contribute to the house, them, even though I live in another country. The house needs to be painted, I pay for it. They are behind the electricity bill, I pay for it. My sister and her boyfriend, who actually live there on the other hand, just sleep all day, play games, surf the internet, and don't have a job. 2, when I asked my mom if my sister or her boyfriend could get a job to help out, she said that my sister needs to attend the course, which is 1 day a week, and is not able to work. 3, my mom lets my sister's boyfriend live at our house for free. He doesn't work, hasn't worked in a year, and doesn't contribute aside from the occasional housework. Whenever I bring this up, she defends him and her. I brought this up to them, and they, mom, sister, and her boyfriend, think I'm selfish and a bad person and hindering my sister's future because I don't want to contribute anymore. Especially because I can't afford to pay the $280. However, I think that they are just using me at this point and not taking any responsibility. I've tried explaining that the reason I feel uncomfortable is, 1, I live in a foreign country. I won't have anyone to support me if something happens to my job or me. 2, I would like to save and start investing and would like to be more financially stable. 3, I feel like I am always contributing while others get a free ride. I do feel guilty and am considering continuing paying until July, even if it frustrates me, because I do want her to finish and hopefully get a job. Not the a-hole. You said you would help, not pay it by yourself. Your sister is more than capable to get a job and help pay for her course. If she doesn't want to get one, then she doesn't get to enjoy the benefits of having money, like courses. Not the a-hole. Your mom and sister are taking advantage of you. Even her boyfriend is. At this point, you need to stop supporting grown-ups who can support themselves and choose not to. School 1 day a week means she can work 6 days a week. She can even work before or after her course on the day she does go to school. Sounds like she needs to be introduced to the real world. Not the a-hole. Your sister and her boyfriend are mooches, and your mom enables them. I don't think either of them will work until they have to. Update. Your comments made me realize that it's okay to want to save my money and focus on my future, and that they are old enough to be responsible. I called my mom again, one-on-one, and explained again why I find the situation unfair, and that I feel that she favors my sister and boyfriend above me because of this. I told her I would pay until end of April, and after that, she'll have to figure it out with my sister. That also included any other bills. It was a difficult conversation, but she apologized. She didn't realize how stressed I was. She will try to push my sister and her boyfriend more. I really do hope she eventually stops enabling them, but I don't have high hopes for this. My grandmother just passed away. We're in the middle of planning her funeral, and I really only have one request. One particular person, we'll call her Shannon, needs to be banned from it. This sounds bad, but hear me out. Shannon is my sister's stepdaughter. When Shannon was 12, her mother passed away a little under 2 months before mine and my sister's mother. Shannon's father couldn't allow her to go to her mother's funeral because our own mother was severely ill. They had 2 very young kids, so they would have had to allow her to fly across country alone and then risk a kidnapping from the extended relatives. She was obviously very hurt by this, and their solution to that was to, unbeknownst to anyone else, make her think that my mother's funeral was about her own mother as well. At my mother's funeral, we were blindsided by pictures for not only my mother, but also my niece's mother as well. They'd also gotten a hold of the urn and had that prominently on display. They basically turned it into a joint funeral, and my niece played it up 100%. She acted like she was the primary mourner and gave a full 5-minute eulogy to just her mother. It was ridiculously inappropriate and turned what should have been a nice memorial into a drama-filled sideshow. My mother and Shannon's mother had never met, so we had to tell the full story of my sister's husband's first marriage when it should have been just about my mother's life. I'm not willing to risk any of that again for my grandmother's funeral, so I want her banned. Yes, it was wrong of the adults to enable it to happen, but she had to have known better. I could even forgive it if she had ever in the last 10 years apologized at all. But she defends it and acts like she deserved to do it because her father and stepmom, my sister, didn't let her go to her mother's funeral. Yes, it's not good that they didn't, but unfortunately things happened, and it doesn't give you a free pass to just do whatever you want to do. Word is spread, and relatives that aren't even my sister and her husband are mad at me over this. They think that I just need to let it go, and I can't just ban family from a funeral, especially over something they did over a decade ago. Am I really that wrong to still be angry over this? A 12-year-old was not allowed to attend her own mother's funeral, and all the adults around her lied. And now you want to punish her? I really and truly hope this is not real. Yes, the a-hole. Yes, the a-hole. She was 12 and people lied to her. It was your sister and her husband that made a farce out of your mother's funeral. But you want Shannon banned? For something she did when she was 12, had just lost her mother, wasn't allowed to go to the real funeral, and was led to believe it was a joint funeral. What exactly are you afraid of is going to happen during this funeral that makes this ban the slightest reasonable?